After the capture of Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro, the spotlight is now on Delcy Rodríguez. Hello and welcome. You're watching Deep Dive. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Venezuela's Supreme Court has ordered that Vice President Delcy Rodríguez assume the role of acting president in the absence of President Nicolás Maduro, who was detained earlier in the day during an Operation Absolute Resolve carried out by U.S. forces. The Constitutional Chamber ruled that Rodríguez would assume the office of President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in order to guarantee administrative continuity and the comprehensive defense of the nation. That is what Venezuela's constitution outlines in its different scenarios, anticipating a president's absence. Under Articles 233 and 234, whether the absence is temporary or absolute, the vice president takes over the presidential duties. The ruling said the court would further deliberate to determine the applicable legal framework to guarantee the continuity of the state, the administration of government, and the defense of sovereignty in the face of the forced absence of the president of the republic. Rodríguez had earlier said that Maduro remained the country's only president despite his capture by U.S. forces. However, her comments contradicted U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks, who said Rodríguez had been sworn in as president and was willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Trump also added that the U.S. would be running the South American nation in the immediate future. While standing before the Venezuelan flag, Rodríguez said the early morning operation represents a blatant violation of international law and Venezuela's sovereignty. She added that the action must be rejected by Venezuelans and condemned by governments across Latin America. She also said Venezuela will not be anyone's colony. Listen.
Único presidente de Venezuela, el presidente Nicolás Maduro. Aquí está el alto mando más importante.
Here's what we know about Delcy Rodríguez, who's at the helm now of Venezuela as it plunges into uncertainty. Delcy Rodríguez was born in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas on the 18th of May 1969. She is the daughter of left-wing guerrilla fighter Jorge Antonio Rodríguez, who founded the revolutionary Liga Socialista Party in the 1970s. She studied law at the Central University of Venezuela and has risen rapidly through the political ranks over the past decade. The 56-year-old has spent more than 2 decades as one of the influential figures of Chavismo, the political movement founded by former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Maduro, who is also a follower of Chavismo, has led it since the death of Chavez in 2013. Delcy Rodríguez has worked closely with her brother, Jorge Rodríguez, who heads the National Assembly legislature. She has held various positions in power in the country, serving as the Communication and Informations Minister from 2014 to 2017. She then took charge of the Foreign Ministry until 2017, defending the Venezuelan government as it faced international criticism over human rights abuses and election fraud. As Foreign Minister, she attempted to crash a Mercosur trade bloc meeting in Buenos Aires following Venezuela's suspension from the group. In 2017, Rodríguez began serving as the head of the pro-government Constituent Assembly, which expanded Maduro's powers following the opposition's win in the 2015 legislative election. In 2018, Maduro appointed her as her vice president in his second term. In a post on X, he described her as a young woman, brave, seasoned daughter of a martyr, revolutionary and tested in 1,000 battles. She retained the post during Maduro's third presidential term, which began on the 10th of January 2025, following the controversial July 2024 elections. The Venezuelan opposition claimed that the polls were fraudulent and that Maduro was not elected as the country's leader. It insists that the election was won by Ambassador Edmundo González Urrutia, a position supported by some governments in the region, as per media reports. However, through all of this, Rodríguez has been a constant in Maduro's reign. He called her a tiger for her die-hard defense of his socialist government. Until the president was captured, she also served as Venezuela's chief economic authority and minister of petroleum. In August 2024, Maduro added the oil ministry to Rodríguez's portfolio, where she's been tasked with managing escalating U.S. sanctions on the country's most important industry. She became a key figure in the management of Venezuela's economy and gained major influence with the country's withered private sector. As per media reports, she has applied orthodox economic policies in a bid to fight exaggerated inflation. So what's in store for Delcy Rodríguez? Trump has said the U.S. will run the country until a judicious transition can happen in Venezuela. He had also told reporters earlier that the U.S. was working with the Venezuelan vice president. Before Rodríguez addressed the National Defense Council, the U.S. president said in a press conference that the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had spoken with the vice president, and she appeared willing to work with Washington on a new phase for Venezuela. Trump claimed she had a conversation with Marco. She said, "We're going to do whatever you think you need." I think she was quite courteous. "We're going to do this right," quote unquote. Well, for now, Delcy Rodríguez remains the most powerful person in crisis in Venezuela. Maduro's out, but his top allies still hold power. However, analysts believe that Rodríguez is unlikely to back down and cooperate with the United States of America. Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat, joins us live. Ambassador Sikri, what next for Venezuela is the big question. For now, Delcy Rodríguez takes charge as acting president. What does this mean for the country?
Thank you. Yes, I think that the events of Venezuela have, over the last 24 hours, have created a huge stir all across the world. We've seen our Government of India statement, which is very carefully monitoring the situation, which means that there could be another statement later, but they have called for peaceful dialogue to resolve the situation. I think the appointment of Delcy Rodríguez as the acting president of Venezuela signals one or two things. First of all, everybody was expecting that either the opposition leader, which, as you correctly pointed out, some people are saying that he won the election, or even the Nobel Peace Laureate from Venezuela, Ms. Machado. She was all set to come back to Venezuela and thought that she would be handed power. But I think the American government has gone in favor of continuity and not creating any chaotic situation where there would not be support. I think they are recalling here what has happened in Bangladesh, where installing a Nobel laureate like Mohammad Yunus has not helped the situation at all. He is extremely unpopular. He has not been able to control the institutions of governance, and there is complete dissatisfaction and lawlessness and violence and anarchy. So I think the expectation with appointing Delcy Rodríguez as the acting president is that she would be able to control the situation, because all the people presently in different positions are ones appointed by President Maduro's government, and so she would be familiar with them. And whether there's a transition that President Trump has spoken of, he said in his own message that he thought that Ms. Machado, the Nobel laureate, does not have the support. So clearly they have gone for stability instead of rapid change. Let us see how the situation turns out, how the people of Venezuela react, how the institutions like the army and other, the assembly and so on, how they react. This is a very much an evolving situation.
Yes. Ambassador Sikri, also now, Rodríguez, given her track record, her history, she's obviously held numerous positions of, government and, of course, has administrative experience. How do you believe she's going to handle this crisis then? And also, looking at the fact that she's been quite a staunch loyalist to Maduro, what is her equation with the United States going to be? Is she going to cooperate with them, or is she going to hold her own?
Yeah, this is it is a very, very important question, and one doesn't know the answer right now. But it could be possible that the American government had been speaking to her already. This is also one of the possibilities being mentioned, that because it has been a very smooth transition in that sense. She immediately accepted to be the acting president, and even constitutional articles are being quoted to say that since President Nicolás Maduro is no longer there, so she can be the acting president. So it's being presented in a very constitutional light, again in sharp contrast to Bangladesh, where it is a completely unconstitutional government. There's no provision in the constitution for such an interim regime. So I'm just remarking all the time because it draws a contrast. And in Venezuela, I think they want to keep any disruption to the minimum. They want the oil industry to continue to flow. The American companies are supposed to be going there. And that is the big question now. What is going to happen to that? Because we know that one of the key reasons is that Venezuela, China was the largest purchaser of Venezuelan oil, and they were paying for it in yuan, not in dollars. So this is now a big question, whether the concern about the dollar as the premium currency for all oil prices, as the currency to be quoted for the value of oil. This is the big question now, whether this is the main reason why this sharp change has been brought about in Venezuela. But be that as it may, I think the very fact that Delcy Rodríguez has been sworn in, and she could bring a peaceful coming together of all the institutions, but we don't know that yet. We don't know what the reaction, whether the army authorities have also been spoken to, because obviously yesterday when the helicopters were flying overhead in Caracas, there was no reaction to those, American helicopters flying overhead. So the army was standing down, as it were, at that time. So what that signifies, and whether they have, come on the side of Delcy Rodríguez, whether there will be some other reaction from them. Well, there are a lot of questions being answered on a daily basis.
Okay.
And I think it's a very evolving situation.
All right, Ambassador Sikri, thank you for joining us with your perspective on this segment.